We've decided you're no longer welcome here. Stay away permanently. That was the message my mother sent me. No explanation. No warmth. Just rejection carved into words that hit harder than any slap. I stood outside the house I grew up in, suitcase in hand. The locks had already been changed. The curtains were drawn. My own reflection stared back at me from the darkened window, a stranger in the place I once called home. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds. My phone trembled in my hand, but no new message came. Nothing. I walked away, numb, telling myself I'd never beg for their love again. But exactly 1 week later, a voicemail arrived from her financial advisor. His voice was frantic, urgent, and it revealed a truth that changed everything. My name is Sophia, and I will never forget the night my mother erased me from her life with one cold, merciless message. We've decided you're no longer welcome here. Stay away permanently. The words lit up on my phone screen while I stood on the front porch of the house I grew up in. The house where I learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where I decorated the Christmas tree every December, where my mother tucked me in when I was sick. Now all I had was that message. And silence. I reached for the doorknob, but my key didn't fit. The locks had been changed. I tried again, desperation in my trembling hands. Nothing. I pounded on the door, whispering, "Mom? Dad?" But no one came. The curtains were drawn, shadows stretching behind the windows. The only sound was the hollow thump of my suitcase wheels on the porch. Neighbors peeked through blinds. A car slowed as it passed, the driver curious about the girl locked out of her own home. I reread the message a dozen times. Each time I hoped it would rearrange itself into something less cruel. But it didn't. Stay away permanently. It was as if my mother had drawn a line through my name and erased me from existence. Called her phone. Straight to voicemail. Called my father. The sound of their silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Hours later, I dragged my suitcase down the street. The night air was heavy, filled with the smell of lavender from the garden my mother had once tended with pride. Even the flowers seemed to mock me now. By the time I checked into a cheap roadside motel, my body was numb. The room smelled of bleach, and the flickering neon sign outside cast shadows across the cracked ceiling. I lay on the stiff mattress staring at the phone in my hand. I typed out messages. "Please tell me what I did wrong. We can fix this. Mom, I need you." One by one I deleted them. I couldn't bring myself to hit send. Instead I scrolled through old photos. Mom and me at my high school graduation. Dad grilling in the backyard. The family Christmas card we sent out 3 years ago with all of us smiling in matching sweaters. I stared at those frozen moments, wondering how they could vanish so completely in the span of a single text. The truth is, there hadn't been warning signs. Sure, my mother and I argued sometimes. What family doesn't? But nothing explained this. The next day I went back. Maybe it had been a mistake. Maybe she'd texted in anger and regretted it. I stood again at the front door, suitcase in hand, heart pounding with foolish hope. The locks still didn't turn. The curtains were still drawn. And taped to the door was a note. Handwritten in her familiar cursive. "Don't come back. Respect our decision." Respect. I wanted to rip the note into 1,000 pieces. Instead, I folded it gently and slid it into my bag. Proof. Proof that this wasn't a dream or a misunderstanding. This was real. Back at the motel, the days blurred. Barely ate. Barely slept. I walked to the diner across the street and sat with coffee I didn't drink, staring at families laughing together in booths. The sound of children's voices made me ache inside. The hardest part wasn't the rejection. It was the emptiness of not knowing why. Had I said something wrong? Failed to meet some invisible standard? Was I a disappointment, a burden? Every night, I replayed my last dinner with them. Just a week earlier. We'd eaten spaghetti, laughed about a silly commercial, and Mom kissed my forehead goodnight. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing hinted that in 7 days she would slam the door shut on me forever. And yet she had. By the end of the week, I stopped hoping for a call. I stopped checking the phone every 5 minutes. I told myself I would never hear from them again. But then, on the 7th day, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. The voice on the other end wasn't my mother's. It was a man's. Urgent. Nervous. Miss Sophia. This is Mr. Grant, your mother's financial advisor. Please call me back. Immediately. It's about your mother's accounts. Something is very wrong. I froze, the phone slippery in my hand. Why would her financial advisor be calling me? And what could possibly be wrong? The voicemail kept replaying in my head. This is Mr. Grant, your mother's financial advisor. Please call me back. Immediately. It's about your mother's accounts. Something is very wrong. I must have listened to it 5 times before I gathered the courage to dial him back. My hands were clammy, my heart racing, like I was about to uncover a secret I wasn't meant to know. When he answered, his voice was strained but relieved. Sophia, thank you for calling back. I wasn't sure if you'd ignore me. Why are you calling me? Asked bluntly. My mother doesn't even want me near her house. Why would her business be any of my concern? He sighed heavily. That's exactly why I'm calling you. Because despite what she's told you, your name is all over her accounts. My stomach lurched. What do you mean, my name? Several accounts, savings, investments, even a trust. They're listed under you. Transferred in the past month. But you didn't sign for them, did you? I sat down hard on the motel bed. No, I didn't sign anything. I didn't even know she had these. That's the problem, he said, his voice lowering. She's moving money around, liquidating assets, and the timing is suspicious. There are investigations into her company, Sophia. If she transferred funds into your name without consent, she might be trying to protect herself by making you the fall person. The room tilted around me. My mother hadn't just cut me off emotionally. She had left me out in the cold, while quietly tying her mess to my identity. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. You're telling me she's committing fraud in my name. I can't prove it yet. But the signatures don't match yours, and the transfers happened right before she locked you out. The words stabbed like knives. Suddenly, her rejection made sense. This wasn't just about family drama. This was strategy. She didn't want me back in that house, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Because she knew if I asked questions, I'd find something. Mr. Grant's tone turned urgent. Sophia, listen to me carefully. If this comes to light, and it will, you could be implicated. The authorities will see your name, your social security, your consent. Unless you can prove otherwise, they'll assume you were complicit. A lump formed in my throat. But I had nothing to do with this. I believe you. But belief won't hold up in court. Documentation will. Do you still have access to anything from her? Old records, mail, even a laptop? I laughed bitterly. No. She threw me out with a suitcase. Everything else is behind those new locks. He was silent for a moment. Then you need to be careful. Very careful. She may already know you're a liability. That's why she wanted you gone. My chest tightened. For years I thought my mother loved me. Even when we argued, I believed deep down that I mattered. Now the truth was unraveling. I wasn't her daughter in this story. I was her shield, her pawn. After we hung up, I sat in the motel room with the phone still pressed to my ear. My reflection in the mirror across the room looked like a ghost, eyes sunken, lips pale. I thought back to our last family dinner, a week before the lockout. Mom had made spaghetti, her favorite comfort dish. She laughed at something Dad said, poured herself a glass of wine. She kissed my forehead goodnight. And all the while she was planning this. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the motel walls made me jolt. What if the police came knocking? What if debt collectors showed up? What if Mom had dragged me into something so dark I'd never crawl out? By morning, I decided I couldn't sit in fear. I had to see for myself. I marched into the downtown bank, my hands trembling as I handed over my ID. I was told there are accounts in my name, I said. The manager typed at his computer, then disappeared into a back room. Minutes felt like hours before he returned with a folder. He slid it across the desk. "Miss Miller," he said slowly, "these accounts are indeed under your name. Significant amounts. But," he frowned, "the signatures look off." I opened the folder. Page after page bore my name in ink, written in a hand that mimicked mine but wasn't mine. "This isn't me," I said, my voice breaking. "I never signed these." The manager's tone grew sharp. "Then someone has committed fraud. And since the accounts are active, the responsibility could fall on you." The world tilted again. My mother hadn't just exiled me. She had tied me to crimes I didn't commit. As I stumbled out of the bank clutching the folder, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Mr. Grant. His voice more urgent than before. "Sophia, I've just been contacted by investigators. They're closing in on your mother. But you're involved on paper. If you don't protect yourself now, you'll go down with her." I stood frozen on the sidewalk, folder in hand, heart in my throat. I'd come looking for answers. Instead, I found a trap. The folder felt heavier with every step I took away from the bank. My name, my handwriting forged again and again. Counts I'd never opened. Loans I'd never touched. I walked through the city in a daze, clutching the papers like a bomb. The traffic blurred, people brushed past, but I heard nothing. Only one question roared in my mind. Why would my mother do this to me? Back in the motel, I spread the papers across the bed. My signature was shaky, too perfect in places, too sloppy in others. A cheap imitation of me. "This is fraud," I whispered, my voice breaking. "She framed me." My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Mr. Grant. "Sophia, I need you to understand. The investigators are circling fast. The FBI suspects your mother funneled stolen funds through your identity. You must protect yourself. Now." The room spun. FBI. My throat closed. I dropped onto the edge of the bed, hugging myself as if I could hold the fear in. The knock came sooner than I expected. A firm, deliberate knock that made my heart slam against my ribs. FBI. Opened the door. Froze. My hands went clammy. Maybe if I stayed quiet, they'd go away. But the knock came again, harder this time. I pulled the door open. 2 agents stood there, badges gleaming. A man with steel gray hair, a woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Are you Sophia Miller?" the man asked. I nodded, my knees weak. "We need to ask you a few questions. May we come in?" The motel room suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. They stepped inside, their presence filling every corner. The woman spoke first. "Sophia, we're investigating multiple accounts tied to your identity. Over $200,000 moved in the last month. Do you have an explanation?" My voice cracked. "I didn't do it. I didn't even know about them until yesterday. My mother, I stopped, the words catching in my throat. "She used my name. She forged my signature." The man pulled out a folder. He flipped it open and slid a page across the table. "Is this your signature?" I stared at the paper. My name scrawled at the bottom of a loan agreement. My stomach dropped. "No. It looks like mine, but it's not. I swear." He studied me carefully. "Do you understand the position you're in? On paper, these are your accounts, your loans. Unless we can prove otherwise, you are complicit." The motel walls felt like they were closing in. "You have to believe me. I didn't sign anything. She did this. My mother." The woman leaned forward, her gaze sharp. "Why would your mother frame you?" I laughed bitterly, though tears stung my eyes. "Why would she lock me out of my own home? Why would she send me a text telling me I was no longer welcome? She's hiding. She's protecting herself. And I'm the easiest person to sacrifice." The man closed the folder. "If that's true, you need to cooperate fully. Show us everything. Every document. Every message. If you hold back even a little, you'll go down with her." I shoved the bank folder toward them, my hands shaking. "Take it. Take all of it. Just clear my name. They exchanged a glance. The woman spoke again. Sophia, listen carefully. Your mother is under surveillance. We believe she's moving assets offshore. If she succeeds, she disappears, and the trail ends with you. If we can't stop her, you'll be the one left holding the bag. The words hit like a hammer. My mother wasn't just abandoning me. She was building her escape route through me. When they finally left, I collapsed onto the bed, tears spilling at last. I wanted to scream, to tear the forged papers apart. Instead, I lay there shaking, replaying every memory of her. Every hug, every whispered "I love you," and wondering how much of it was a lie. The phone buzzed again. I didn't want to answer, but I couldn't ignore it. Mr. Grant's voice was panicked. Sophia, it's worse than we thought. She didn't just transfer accounts into your name. She put property under you too. If investigators think you're complicit, it could mean prison. You need to act fast. Property. My name wasn't just tied to money. It was tied to assets. I sat up, wiping my face. For the first time, anger burned hotter than fear. She wanted me erased. She wanted me blamed. She wanted me broken. But if she thought I was going to lie down and let her destroy me, she was wrong. Very wrong. The word property echoed in my mind long after Mr. Grant hung up. Money I could almost understand. But property, real estate, signed over in my name without my knowledge. That wasn't just fraud. That was entrapment. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the motel pipes made me jolt awake, convinced FBI agents or debt collectors would burst in and drag me away. By dawn, I was running on caffeine and adrenaline, clutching the folder like a lifeline. I called Mr. Grant back. What property? Where? He cleared his throat. A small apartment complex on Belmont Avenue. Deeded in your name 3 weeks ago. Your mother arranged the paperwork. But Sophia, it's clean. No liens, no loans. Which means it's valuable. And which means both sides will come after it. Both sides. I whispered. The authorities will see it as evidence. Her creditors will see it as collateral. And on paper, it belongs to you. The room tilted. So either way I'm trapped. Silence. Then his voice softened. Unless you fight. Unless you get ahead of this. Do you understand? Whoever controls Belmont controls the narrative. By midday I was standing in front of it. The Belmont complex was old but solid. 3 stories of faded brick, iron balconies, a small courtyard with weeds pushing through cracked concrete. Tenants' laundry flapped on clotheslines. Children's bikes leaned against stairwells. It didn't look like the kind of place to spark legal wars. But to me it was a battlefield. I walked inside, heart pounding, the deed copy clutched in my bag. The manager's office smelled of coffee and dust. A tired-looking woman behind the desk looked up. You must be Sophia. Froze. How do you? Your mother stopped by before she disappeared. Said her daughter would take over. The woman's lips curled in something between pity and suspicion. We've been waiting for you. My throat went dry. She'd set me up so thoroughly even the tenants expected me. Can I see the records? I asked, forcing my voice steady. She slid a ledger across the desk. Rent rolls, maintenance receipts, everything neat and orderly. And at the bottom of each page, my forged signature authorizing expenses. I wanted to slam the book shut, scream that it wasn't me. But instead I forced myself to breathe. If she left me this, maybe I could turn it back on her. As I walked the halls, children ran past me, laughing. Tenants nodded politely, assuming I was the new landlord. For a moment, I felt the weight of power. Not asked for, not earned, but real nonetheless. And with power came something else. Resolve. That night, I called Mr. Grant again. If this is mine on paper, I'm going to use it. I'll cooperate with the FBI. Give them every file, every signature. But I'll protect Belmont. It's the only thing she gave me that isn't poisoned. He hesitated. Sophia, that's risky. You're walking into fire. I've been in fire since the day she locked the door, I snapped. Then softer. I can't run anymore. I won't. The next morning, as if the universe was testing me, the fire came knocking. A car pulled up outside the motel. Black, tinted windows. My stomach dropped. Not the FBI this time. Two men stepped out, dressed sharp, moving with the confidence of people who didn't ask twice. One tapped on my door. Calm, deliberate. "Miss Miller," he said smoothly. "We represent individuals with a financial interest in your mother's debts. We understand Belmont Avenue is in your name. We'd like to discuss how you can make this easier for everyone." My hands clenched into fists. My voice shook, but I forced it out anyway. "It's not for sale." The man smiled faintly, but his eyes were cold. "Everything is for sale. We'll be in touch." They left as silently as they arrived. I stood frozen, knees weak, realizing the fight wasn't just in courtrooms. It was in alleyways, in parking lots, in motel hallways. But for the first time, fear wasn't all I felt. Beneath it, stronger, steadier, was something else. Determination. The knock from the debt collectors still echoed in my ears when I dialed Mr. Grant again. My voice was tight, controlled. "They came for me," I whispered. "Not FBI. Not neighbors. Collectors. They knew about Belmont." There was a pause on the other end. Then his voice hardened. "Then you're in more danger than I thought. They'll circle like sharks now. The only thing that keeps you breathing is the fact you're the legal owner. That makes you leverage. Don't hand it over." I sank onto the edge of the bed, clutching my phone. "I can't do this alone." "You won't," he said quietly. "I've been your mother's advisor for years, Sophia. I watched her twist numbers, cheat systems, destroy people who trusted her. I stayed quiet. That was my mistake. But I won't let her destroy you." For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides fear. I felt the faint spark of hope. The next morning, he met me at a quiet diner. He looked older than I remembered. Tired, worn down by secrets. He slid a flash drive across the table. "This," he said, "is everything. Every account, every forged document, every transaction that proves your mother built her empire on lies. If you give this to the FBI, you stop being a suspect. You become their witness." I stared at the drive. "And Belmont?" He hesitated. "If we're smart, we can separate it. Prove it was placed in your name without consent. If you're lucky, the court lets you keep it. If not, at least you stay out of prison." My chest tightened. She hadn't just stolen from strangers. She had stolen my freedom, my future, and tried to gamble it all away like it was nothing. But now, with this evidence, I had a weapon. That night, I sat in Belmont's courtyard, watching the tenants come and go. A little girl waved at me from a balcony, her laughter spilling into the evening air. I waved back, smiling despite myself. For the first time, I realized Belmont wasn't just numbers on paper. It was people, families, lives. If I let my mother's enemies win, these people would lose their homes. I clenched my fists. Not on my watch. The fight began the next morning. I marched into the FBI field office with a flash drive in my bag, my head held higher than it had in weeks. Agent Collins, the sharp-eyed woman from before, raised her brows when she saw me. "Back again." I slid the drive across the table. "This is everything. Proof my mother used me. Proof I didn't consent." She plugged it in, eyes scanning the files. Her lips tightened. "This is solid. You understand, Sophia, if you testify with this, you'll be cutting ties permanently. She'll never forgive you." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Forgive me." She changed the locks and left me to burn. "I don't need her forgiveness." Collins studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right. Let's bring her down." Walking out of that building, I felt different. For weeks, I had been the victim. The girl abandoned on a porch, erased from her family, terrified of a future I couldn't control. But not anymore. Now I was a fighter with allies, evidence, and purpose. And I knew one thing for certain. My mother had underestimated me. The courtroom was cold, almost sterile. Every sound, footsteps, shuffling papers, even the judge's gavel, echoed like thunder in my chest. I sat at the witness table, hands clenched in my lap, the flash drive evidence already in the prosecutor's hands. Across the room, my mother sat at the defense table. She looked smaller than I remembered, her sharp suits traded for plain clothes, her face tight with defiance. But when her eyes met mine, there was no regret, no apology, only anger. The prosecutor's voice rang out. "The state calls Sophia Miller." My legs felt heavy as I stood, but my voice, shaky at first, found its strength. I told them everything. The message she sent. Changed locks. The accounts I never signed. The property that carried my name like a curse. "She used me," I said, forcing my gaze to hold hers. "Not just as a daughter. As a shield. As her escape plan. She cut me out of her life because she needed me on paper. But I will not take the fall for her crimes." Gasps rippled through the room. My mother shifted, eyes narrowing into daggers. When the defense tried to discredit me, calling me bitter, resentful, vengeful, I didn't flinch. The FBI agents backed me up with the files. Mr. Grant confirmed everything with financial records. The web of lies she had spun for years was unraveling, thread by thread. At one point, the judge asked her directly, "Did you transfer assets into your daughter's name without her consent?" She hesitated. Her lips pressed tight. But silence was as good as an admission. The prosecutor closed with fire. "This is not just fraud. It is betrayal. A betrayal of trust so deep it left her own child at risk of prison. The evidence speaks louder than blood ties. Guilty." The jury deliberated less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice was steady. "On all counts of fraud, money laundering, and identity theft, we find the defendant guilty." The word echoed through me like a bell. Guilty. I should have felt joy. Triumph. Instead, I felt something quieter, heavier. Relief. As guards led her away, she turned once, her eyes locking with mine. There were no tears, no apologies. Just a cold glare that told me she still blamed me. But for the first time, her blame didn't matter. 'Cause I was free. When the verdict was read, I thought I'd feel fireworks. Justice. Victory. Some triumphant music swelling in my chest. Instead, I felt quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the winds die down and the wreckage is finally visible. My mother was led away in handcuffs. My father never showed his face. And I walked out of that courthouse lighter than I had in months. The FBI cleared my name officially. Every fraudulent account, every forged loan wiped clean. Mr. Grant helped me prove Belmont had been put under me without consent, but in a twist I hadn't expected, the court allowed me to keep it. Belmont wasn't just a property anymore. It was a symbol. A place I could build something real, something mine. The tenants smiled when I came around. Children waved from balconies. Slowly, piece by piece, I started rebuilding, not just a life but a future. I didn't cut ties with my mother because of hate. I cut them because survival demanded it. And in that choice, I discovered something I had never known before. Strength. Because sometimes family doesn't protect you. Sometimes they're the storm. And when they are, you learn to become your own shelter.